Watch Doors of Perception, now on Amazon Prime.
I think it's just going to get weirder and weirder and weirder, and finally it's going to be so weird that people are going to have to talk about how weird it is. Eventually people are going to say, what the hell is going on? It's not enough to say it's nuts, you have to explain why it's so nuts. The invention of artificial life, the cloning of human beings, possible contact with extraterrestrials, the systems which are in place to keep the world sane are utterly inadequate to the forces that have been unleashed.
Welcome back to Forbidden Knowledge News. I'm your host, Chris Matthew. Today my guest is Tomcat. First, be sure to watch Doors of Perception, available now on Amazon Prime. Rent it, buy it, leave a positive review. We would definitely appreciate that. We are booking guests for July. If you have suggestions or you'd like to be a guest, email me, forbiddenknowledgenews@gmail.com. Today I want to welcome back to the show Tomcat, a.k.a. The Reptilian. He is host of Strange Brew Podcast, which is not for the faint of heart or the easily offended. Strange Brew is a dark comedy, true crime, paranormal, conspiracy, and anything strange podcast from the Great White North. Join them on strange journeys as they drink and discuss the creepy and weirder sides of life. Tom, welcome. How you doing?
Not too bad, man. How are you?
Excellent, man. It's great to have you back. And I know today you wanted to discuss some concerning events that have been unfolding in Canada, where you're from, that most people here in the United States will most likely never hear about. Also, many of us here tend to think that we won't be affected by some of the things going on there, but to me, it's really all a slippery slope towards dystopia. But before we get into what you wanted to discuss, it's been a little while since you've been on. Let the audience know a little bit about yourself and where they can find your content.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me back on. I always love coming on the show. I'm a pretty controversial figure, especially as I've gotten older. I do hip hop music. I've been labeled all sorts of things talking about some of the content that I do, even in my music. But I go by The Reptilian. It's a name that's stuck. Like everyone, I should explain it at some point. But even people are like on the show were like, how'd you get that name? And I'm like, I've called myself Tom Thompson. That was after my grandfather. And then my buddy was joking, and he was like, you talk about reptilians and stuff, you should call yourself The Reptilian. And we're like laughing, joking about it. And then it kind of stuck. So I use that for my music. I'm actually almost done a new album. It'll be like 7 songs. The last one I produced, I did about like 18. So just before my baby girl comes, because I'm about to have a kid, I want to release this. It's a different type of album. It's still going to touch upon the same subject matter, but I do like more upbeat beats where everything's kind of more underground. I usually do, if you think of things like, Jedi Mind Tricks type beats or Necro, some of these underground artists. But I decided to do something totally different this time. Still same kind of content, but very almost like Oliver Tree type beats. It's going to be a little different for anyone that's a fan of my music. But also I do a podcast called Strange Brew Podcast. We just celebrated 7 years of doing the show. And it's always been meant to be an escape for people to laugh and enjoy the show with us of all the crazy things that go on in the world, and making fun of cryptids and the paranormal and sharing our own experiences. But there's a couple of things that I've definitely been honed in on. Especially in the last couple of while. Canada is going buck wild. We just installed Mark Carney, which is a banker that has connections to essentially the Rothschilds, the Bilderbergs, the World Economic Forum. He is the walking New World Order. So that's something we can get into. But if you want to find me, it's Strange Brew Podcast everywhere and The Reptilian on all music platforms.
Right on. Great introduction. Well, if you had to let my audience know some of the most concerning things that you're facing there right now, what would you tell them?
Well, there is obviously going to be, hopefully, they're going to probably pass, hate speech type laws and stuff like that to censor people. And that's not good because if you pay attention to what's going on in the UK, they're jailing people for speech, so much so that there's young girls being I don't know if I could use this word on your show, but like,
Yeah.
assaulted by a Muslim, they call them grooming gangs, but they're rape gangs. That's
Yeah.
what they are. And then they're getting like essentially that whole country's going, we'll talk about it, but it's not going well in Europe at all. And one of my co-hosts is from Ireland, which is also facing the same type of problems that I kind of want to get into on this episode. And if you see what's going on there, they're censoring people for speech. They're like somebody assaults your daughter or someone you know, or you see this and you're like, oh, I don't like this. Those guys are disgusting or whatever. And people are getting jailed over calling out people who are criminals and
Right.
rapists. Really, that's what is going on. So if like they want to bring that same type of thing here, they're actually passing legislation to go after the farmers, much like they did in the Netherlands and other places around Europe. Mark Carney is like literally a walking New World Order puppet. He is 100% on board with Agenda 2030. They installed him into power. Not that I think it would make a difference because I think all politicians are parasite. The guy that you have that was running against him, Pierre Poilievre, they're all labeling like the Trump of Canada, but he is the farthest thing from Trump. He spent his time during his campaign wearing turbans and catering to people that are not Canadian. He was speaking in their language. So this is some of the stuff that I want to touch upon. And before we get into some of the stuff, I just want people to realize, right? I've had friends of all walks of life. I grew up with having black friends, indigenous friends. One of my good friends that's been on the show, Alex, he's half black. Like I've had an indigenous guy on the show to talk about this stuff that's going on in Canada. I've had literally friends, and I have Jamaican family. So nothing that I'm going to say throughout this episode is to disparage people. It's to raise awareness of the things that are going on that are a plan that have been talked about for over 100 years, if not longer. But in Canada, it's only getting increasingly worse. We're one of the most taxed countries in the entire world. We are essentially just taxed cattle for the ruling elites of parasites. But it didn't matter what side. Like I always say, the conservatives in Canada, they're not even conservative. They're technically center leftist by definition of their policies, what they do. They didn't speak out against vaccines. They didn't speak out against mass immigration. They didn't speak out against what they did during the trucker convoy and COVID. Some of them kind of brushed upon it. They never have done inquiries to the things that actually matter, Canadians' real issues. They just always tiptoe around the actual issues and just spew out whatever people want to hear. And especially, they never brought up the woke stuff, the gender ideology things, the tranny stuff on conservatives or liberals, right? So the liberals are running towards the New World Order in Canada, but the conservatives are walking. So either way, we're going to get to the same destination, right? We're going to get there at the same time. But we got Mark Carney installed, and they did the same thing that they did in America, where I definitely think it was rigged to some extent, that we had to use pencils on pieces of paper. I brought a pen, and I don't even like voting because I think it's all bullshit. But for my wife, I was like, you know what? I'll go do this, and then if he doesn't get in and this doesn't change anything, then I'm never doing this again because it's pointless. You're participating and giving your consent away to the government to rule over you. That's how I view voting. It's this idea of like, look at me, I'm participating, even though that's not what's going on, right? They just puppet and put in whoever they want, and we use pencil ballots, okay, like the piece of paper with a pencil on it. They said they didn't count the ones with pens supposedly, and then all of a sudden, oh, they have to recount these votes, and the Liberal government started off as the minority. So in Canada, they have to, if you're a minority government, then other governments, other political parties can intersect and change things. And but if they're the majority, then they can have pretty much dominance and control over a lot of things. And now they're claiming, oh, all these ballots didn't get counted, and all these things are happening. Even though I saw it all around the internet, everyone was like blue wave, like they wanted the conservatives to get in. Everybody I knew. There were some people that were sheeple that I was like, even in my family, that said, well, I might do something different. I'm like, I might do something different. But Mark Carney said whatever anybody wanted to hear. He was just a puppet. And then the whole thing with Trudeau, right? What he did to the Canadian people, how he stepped on our rights, stole billions of dollars of us, that has proven all these slush funds. And there's literally a laundry list, like a scroll worth of scandals and things that Trudeau was involved in. And then he gets to walk away scot-free, no consequences consequences whatsoever. And I truly believe that until we start seeing corrupt politicians go to jail and them actually face consequences for their actions, you're never going to vote your way out of a system that was built and designed to enslave you. And for all the fans, Chris did tell me to go on and rant and talk, but I just wanted to kind of give you like, it's fucked here. It's like communism, and they're just doing whatever they want, and people are thinking like, oh, we'll protest or we'll like sign a petition. It's doing nothing. It has done nothing. You have the Palestinian protest, which I don't like Israel as much as the next guy. I'm actually aware of what their history is, who they are, what's going on, what they're doing, why they're doing it. But I don't like them as much as the next person. But these Palestinian protests that are taking place all across the Western world have not saved one single fucking life. It's actually probably hurt more people than they understand, because it's blocking infrastructure. They're going in front of highways. They're assaulting people. All the things that they're doing, and a lot of people think that they're paid. But like, I don't know if you don't get it yet, people. But signing pieces of papers with petitions and just going in the streets and yelling with flags from a different country doesn't do anything.
You mentioned something important earlier. Right now, everybody is hating each other over race, religion, and politics, and that's the idea. It's a class war. We're supposed to be fighting the parasitic ruling class, and it should be us versus them, not us versus the other races or people of different religions or different political beliefs, but that's what it becomes about. You mentioned the whole anti-Semitic thing here in the United States. We're teetering on the possibility of passing these anti-Semitic hate speech laws in certain places. What's going on with that over there?
They're trying to do the same thing. It's all around the world, because then you realize who is kind of controlling us. Like Pierre, the guy that was the conservative, called himself a goy twice. He called himself goy on stage in front of the Israeli flag. The first time he said, I was just a simple goy from the prairies. Literally verbatim what he said. So he's pledging his allegiance. Either side, it was both. But people are starting to notice all of these things, right? And I'm not saying it's all like Jewish people. A lot of it's the Zionist aspects of it, which a lot of those Zionists aren't even actually Jewish. They don't practice any of the religious aspects of it. Some of them do. But you know that there's a concern, right? And all the connections, they're building the third temple soon, supposedly. And like, in my eyes, right, some of these ethnic groups and these people, and Christians fall for it too, the kind of Zionist cucks of Christianity are falling for all this stuff. But like, you think about it, right? They're dominated over by their beliefs. Muslims is the same thing. Everyone, especially religion, is divide and conquer. And they, according to this research I've done, the things I've looked into, a lot of them truly believe in these prophecies, and that so much so that I think that they'll manufacture them to bring about prophecies, because like they'll sacrifice the heifer, the red heifer, all that type of stuff. They could easily be manufacturing, convincing the Jewish people, Christians, Muslims, whoever it might be, that, oh, it's the end times, which a lot of people believe. I've had Dustin Nimoy's on the show twice now. The second episode hasn't released, and he believes that the world is ending, and Jews are demons and all these things. And I'm not saying that that's true, but it was interesting to have someone like him on, because he does prove it with, like, he tries to provide like biblical references of why this stuff is happening. I'm on the side where I think these things are being manufactured, and they truly believe, a lot of them do believe in what they're doing and why they're doing it. And it's the same thing here, where like, obviously you have all these protesters, like the left complained about the trucker convoy and what was going on in Ottawa, but now they've been protesting for, it's like years at this point now, every day almost, marching around the streets, all wearing masks and stuff like that. And then people harp on the right, which I'm not either side. I'm a nationalist. I just care for my country. Harp on the right for now, nationalist groups are popping up and wearing masks, because the left is a well-paid cult that is now, able to get away with murder. We've seen this numerous times. But like, there's so many people that are now being, are noticing a lot of the people in those protests are either being paid or they don't really know what's going on. They're just like, it's an ethnic cleansing, it's genocide, because they were told to think that. A lot of those people are like, we're older. We used to call them sheeple. Everyone calls them NPCs, but like they just like whatever the thing is that's hot. And that who's oppressed next? Oh, it's Black Lives Matter. Oh, that's what they hone into. And I truly believe it's like a cultural Marxist agenda. And we'll get to what I really
Right
think
on.
is going on, especially.
You mentioned that many people are saying that it's the end of the world, and you said that they are trying to manifest biblical prophecy by these high impact events. And I think you're 100% right there. But I do think that we could be seeing an end to an old system and the beginning of this technocratic nightmare that has already begun to roll into the United States. The surveillance systems, AI taking over everything, and I think that's why they're getting rid of a lot of high-level government positions, because they don't need them anymore. They're just going to have these AI systems that know how to govern a country, and that's what they're doing. Also with probably with law enforcement as well, which is pretty terrifying.
See, and that's fun. Something that I thought it's funny that you brought that up because I've talked about this on my show recently of this idea of like the AI and how part of me thinks these like the parasites or whatever, they don't really know where to go next. They just know they want total control of humanity. So they want AI to like fix their problems and their mistakes and all that stuff. And that's a dangerous thing. Like if you talk to the AI, right, it espouses a bunch of bullshit and it can be programmed to lie. I've caught it numerous times lying. Like this idea, I truly believe that Canadians, right, are like an ethnic group. We built ourselves into a people, right? The Canadians are the English, French, Irish, and Scottish, and different Europeans that blended together and made what we now know as Canada. Without them, there is no Canada. But the AI will say, oh, India, even though it's not as old as a country, is an ethnic group, but Canadians aren't. So there's a lot of like anti-white sentiments coming out of AI, crazy shit like that too. And you'll get it to disprove itself, to admit it lies. And then if you think about that total control, they don't really need to do anything. And that's why they're trying to get rid of a mass portion of the population. And what we'll like get into is the Kalgeri plan, which is the extinction of white people, white quote unquote, but people of European and Slavic descent and stuff like that. Because I truly believe that it does exist, and I can point to many examples of why it's happening. But the AI, think about it, you got to get rid of some bunch of people. AI takes over, and then they have total control and surveillance over the smaller population, because the less people there are, the more easy they are to control. And why all the things they have been doing to convince people not to have kids. Oh, it's overpopulated. Don't have kids. Oh, wait, we need to flood in all the third world into your countries. Even though we just told you in the 80s, 90s that Canada and America and the world was overpopulated, right? And they do all these things, the transgender agenda, the cultural Marxism stuff to brainwash people to hate their own ancestors and their own history and heritage, the birth control, and like all of this stuff that I didn't really start like really noticing all the stuff until I paid attention and looked at it. And, especially when they started being like, oh, Canadian is anybody. Anyone from anywhere can be anything is what our conservative goofy fuck said. And it's like, that means nothing then. If anyone from anywhere can be anything, it means nothing. Right? So it's like, if I go to Japan, I don't become a Japanese person because I stood on their fucking soil for a day or two, But the AI is a part of that whole end plan, I believe.
It's something else that goes along with everyone who at least is in a religious space, Abrahamic religions, believing that it's the end of the world. Well, they have the state of mind that they can't do anything about it. It's inevitable. It's prophecy. So whatever happens is meant to happen. And people just sit back and they just believe that they don't have to do anything, and that's what's going to save the world. But it's a psychological operation, I believe.
100%. And that's why it's interesting, like, why, like, when you're like, oh, what do you want to talk about? And I was like, I've honed in on the Kalgeri plan and this idea of genociding quote unquote white people, because I'm witnessing it. I'm seeing it happen all around the world. One of my co hosts is in Ireland. They're essentially paying for their own self destruction. They're paying to house a lot of just military aged men, which all these plans and things that I've seen unfold, I didn't think I'd see unfold till I was older. Because even when during the Syrian refugee thing, I remember calling it out and be like, why all these people that are coming over here, military aged men, and they're living off the system. Even in Canada, 75% of the refugees that came here in like 2017, 18 are all still on welfare to this day. So they're not contributing anything to the society, right? And it's not against any certain like ethnic group or whatever, but they have been brainwashing people to hate on each other, especially on the white man, quote unquote. Everyone around the world has been programmed to think that white people are evil and our ancestors are evil, when I have no connections to the Rothschild dynasty or the royal family. My ancestors came to Canada, and as far as I've traced back on my mom's side, my grandma, 1604. And before that, they were in America, right? So, like, I've traced my lineage and ancestry hundreds of years back, and people that came to this country with anything, without anything really, just the clothes on their back, that, struggled and survived. And then now they've done this whole thing of cultural Marxism. I believe that's where it stems from. It's like victims and villains, and you get people to fight each other. Where now a guy used one of my videos, because I've gone viral for talking about this stuff, about like, I don't care if you call me a racist or a bigot or a Nazi or a colonizer. Those are just terms that have been brainwashed into people's minds to regurgitate when specifically white people say something that they don't like or they disagree with. And this guy used my video, and then he went on saying the exact same thing that I said people do, is call us all these different names, say that our ancestors. He literally said that white people are descendants of the Nephilim, much like how Dustin Nimoy claims that essentially the Jews are. But he's like, all you guys are just demons, and you are a Nazi and a colonizer, all those things, because it's in your blood, because it's part of your ancestry, because you're actually demons, and you are just Neanderthals that the fallen angels manipulated and created. All these things that like these like YouTube scholars like to say and be like, oh, I watched one show on YouTube or watched a TikTok video that said all white people are demons, we should hate them all. And then they just espouse this stuff, not actually looking into anything, not realizing what's going on. And this is all part of the divide, and especially to attack white people, which, if people didn't know, white people of European descent are less than 8% of the worldwide population. We are actually the real worldwide minority, and I believe this comes from the Kalgeri plan, which we can get into in a sec, because I have some stuff that I can bring up about that.
This is something I have not experienced personally, but like you said, in the UK, Ireland, different places in Europe, I have heard people experiencing this, as well as different social media stories. But social media has just become a toxic cesspool of hate either way. And on top of that, you're in an echo chamber. Any bit of information that you're looking for is going to be not only tailored for you, but it's not going to go any further for you. Same thing for trying to get your information out to anyone else. So the algorithms are completely fucked right now. But tell us what the Kalgeri plan is.
So, and I just want to say this too. I honed in on this because I could see it right with my own eyes. I could see this stuff happening. I've talked to people in the UK. My co-host is in Ireland. All like Irish people have been there for thousands upon thousands of years. Never colonized anyone. Were colonized themselves, enslaved by the British, brought over here before the black slaves ever were. So there's like all these things that like we've been fighting and over. Like the fact that there is like, black people out there that still like claim, slavery, when there's only like literally a tiny percentage of people that are in America that are black that are actually descendants of slaves. It's not that big of a number when you actually look into it. So they use these constant like imaginary crimes, the whole like residential school thing that was bad in Canada. I think what happened to the indigenous is pretty bad, but it wasn't like all white people were doing it. That's like absurd. It was like the Vatican, which has never been held accountable. Like a lot of these secret societies and Masons and stuff like that. And they use this whole victim and villain thing, and that's how they get everyone to fight each other. That's part of this. But essentially, when I started looking at the Kalergi plan, and I'm like, and finding out more of this information of why there is such an attack on specifically white people. I can see it, I could feel it. I look out there, it's everywhere. Canada is like being systematically destroyed. They're using specifically here people from India because there's billions of them, literally billions upon like it's 1 point something billion, right? And they're taking over. They're buying up all our businesses. They're giving them subsidy wages. Up to 70% of wages of some guy that just works at Tim Hortons is being paid by our tax dollars, so they can essentially replace us. I've talked about this on my show too, is the great replacement theory, which is not a theory. It's right there for everybody to see. And it's not affecting any other ethnic group but white people. That's it. Like if you actually look at it on the large scale and you zoom out, it is anywhere that white people exist is being systematically destroyed by mass immigration. All at the same time, much like COVID, where it was all of the Western world walked in lockstep other than a few countries. Now it's the same thing, except for like Poland and Hungary. Every other country that white people exist in has actually been flooded with people who are foreign diasporas of people, essentially people that do not blend in, they do not assimilate, they just import their own culture. It's happening in Canada where there's literally like Sikh Indians everywhere, and it's not against them as people because I actually have friends that are. I have a friend that's actually a Sikh Indian. I work with two guys that are Hindus, and I've told them this stuff and talked to them about my concerns about this stuff that's going on, right? So the Kalergi Plan was written about in 1924, and essentially this is from his words. His name was Richard von Cloven Kalergi. The future of a man will be a mixed race. As Pan-Europe, I wish to see a Eurasian Negroid mixture with great variations in personality types. The Jews shall take the leading position since Providence, God, has given Europe a spiritual superior race of nobility called the Jews. The white race of Europe should be destroyed and replaced by a race of Eurasian Negroids who can easily be controlled and ruled over by us. And that's not me saying this, that's from his mouth. And this is written about in 1924. And if you start to pay attention to this stuff, that's literally what's happening. They promote and I'm saying people can love who they want to love, but I think that it's funny because I did grow up with a lot of black friends and people and went to school. And even one kid was like, I can't date a white girl. My parents will be pissed. But if it was a white person saying that, it's racist, right? But you have all these different other like races or ethnic groups. Even my buddy that's from India, he's like, I was like, what would your parents think if you date a white chick? And he's like, no, I can't. Like they would hate me for that. So it's like everyone else does it and sticks to their groups. And I'll get into some of the stuff that I don't want. This is not to divide people. This is to show you the evidence of what's happening and the essentially the objective truth of like that every other group is tribalistic. In Canada, all the Indians look out for Indians. They don't look out for the white guy. They don't look out for even the black guy. They look out for their own cultural group. And you see this happening more and more in the Western world. Muslims like stick to what Muslim. It's happening, and they're from countries where they're not very educated. Like the average IQ in India is like 74, and then when they come here and they're not really educated, they're being flooded into the country and they don't assimilate. They just bring in their bad behaviors. You have literally Sikhs fighting with Hindus in the streets of Canada, waving Khalistani flags, which is a Sikh movement, essentially about building their own place. It's a terrorist movement, in my opinion. But you have Richard von Kalergi founded the EU and wrote the Kalergi Plan, which aims to make a unique races and cultures extinct, to essentially erase all these different ethnic groups, especially with whites. Warburgs, the Rothschilds, the Barkins are all banker cartels responsible for funding the Kalergi's genocidal ideology. The UN and the EU they execute the plan, calling it replacement migration, which I've shown this on a video that got me kicked off of TikTok for like this 27th time or something. I've constantly been kicked off that app. And I brought up, I was like, this is an actual document in the UN. It's the UN Migration Pact, and it's literally there in writing in black and white. You can all see it, and it's about replacement migration. They literally call it that, and it's part of the Agenda 2030. And it also criminalizes criticism of immigration as hate speech, thought crimes of people, and this is eventually, this plan will target every nation on earth. And the thing is, what I bring up when I'm speaking about this stuff is love for my own people and my own culture and heritage, and is not hatred for others. That's absurd that people, as soon as white people want to defend themselves and assert themselves of being like, hey, like, I don't like what's going on in my country that my ancestors built, especially if you're a native, like the white natives in UK, Ireland, Scotland, Sweden, France. Like, France looks like a third world country. London, England looks like a third world country. And this was all being done within the matter of a couple years. It's taken longer than that, but really they opened the floodgates right after COVID. Conveniently, COVID happens. They coerce a vaccine, mostly a lot of times on the white population of the world. Other, like India had their own vaccine. I've talked to my buddies from India about this. China had their own. Everybody else had like their own thing, but we specifically had to get Pfizer and Moderna and all that stuff, right? And conveniently, oh, they give people all this needle. There's all these deaths that have been associated with it. I know people that are developing cancer. All of these things that are population control, specifically targeted at the Western world. And then conveniently right after that, they opened the floodgates for mass immigration all around the Western world. And not to mention the fact that the most people who died during World War I and II were white people. And people be like, oh, what about Japan? If you count the essentially the Bolshevik Revolution that slaughtered millions upon millions of white Christians in Russia that were like essentially being controlled by people like Israel Epstein and all these other conveniently, they're usually Jewish. Like you have Leon Trotsky, whose real name is Bronstein, and he was the one that actually coined the term racist, because the word racism was actually coined by a guy that people would consider racist by today's standard in like 1920. The guy that claimed the word racism literally said, kill the Indian, but don't kill the man inside. Something along those lines. So people would hate this guy, and then they use his phrasing. And then Leon Trotsky used the word racist to shut down and browbeat anyone that was dissident of the communist agenda. And they used these words and terms to like essentially shut down debate during the Bolshevik Revolution. So if you look at it a whole and you zoom out, the last 100 years definitely seems like a strategic effort to get rid of the white man, quote unquote, and then actually weaponize everybody else to hate us and literally call us demons and all other shit that they're spewing.
Now, I do see what you're saying, but I'm going to play devil's advocate just for a minute here.
That's fine. I figured you would.
I have to look that, first of all, there are plenty of powerful elite groups and factions that are extremely white, and very powerful groups that don't seem to want to integrate their white genetics into the rest of the population. Now, I'm sure that exists. Also, I wonder if the flooding of different areas is for destabilization purposes in order to destroy everything so that they can rebuild, of course, their new world order. I just don't see it being beneficial for the people being shipped in and the people from other countries that are coming here, because all they're doing is trying to move their culture over here, and it just doesn't work, and it's causing problems for them and for us. But I also see the targeting of white people in various ways, but I wonder if it's just part of a larger destabilization psychological operation to depopulate in general and rebuild with a more controlled system.
Well, wouldn't it make sense, right? Like, there is obviously a lot of people point, well, white people are running everything. It's actually mostly Jewish people, which I wouldn't consider white. But there is like the Orsinis and some of these more like in the shadows. Like if everyone knows like about now, but the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers, like some of the ones that are out in the surface, right? We all know that they created Israel. Without World War One and Two, there is no Israel. Conveniently, right? And that's why I'm like, there's a lot of people that I find. Let's get it. I find Hitler an interesting character. Do I think he was controlled opposition? For sure. Because I think without him, there is no Israel. So even when I had Ryan Gable on, we were talking about this and having a kind of inquiry about why these things were happening. And he was like, he even said, he's like, I think that the Nazis, quote unquote, were trying to fight for what they believed in, right? About like keeping the country for themselves. And then, like, Germany for the Germans. But then it got hijacked because obviously Hitler was on all sorts of drugs and shaken and stuff like that. And God knows what they actually did to him. But there's a lot of people that are like, oh, he was a good guy. And I'm like, and I've always, I joke about it, but I've never thought that he was the good guy. I think that they use people and put people in positions of power. Like eventually we'll talk about his connection to the Rothschilds on my show. But like they're definitely using everyone to destabilize the countries. Like the modern world was built by white people. Now there's ethnic groups that are claiming that, oh, they're Egyptians and they're Jews and they're
Well, could it be that it's different factions battling for control?
Yeah.
Maybe there are white. I wouldn't say white supremacist factions, but these bloodlines that want to keep their bloodlines pure, and they are of a white descent, maybe trying to battle out control with these other groups that want this new mixed ethnicity.
Yeah. Well, as I was going to say too, is I agree with you when it comes to like, this is all being used as a plan to destroy everybody. That's why I always say when I'm trying, like, people see a minute video of me talking about some shit on TikTok and then they're like, oh, this guy's racist. And then they listen to the show or something like that. And they're like, oh, and I'm like, yeah, it's not. If you're just gonna take out of context things I say, well, I'm literally being like, they're coming after all of us. But first, they have to get rid of Europeans, which the people in power, whether they be Jewish or whatever, they literally admit to it. It's in their writings. I'm not saying this stuff. They literally admit that they need to get rid. Here, I'll even bring up. Where's this? Because this is. It goes along with it. This is from Abe Foxman. He is the ADL president. I speak of the death of the white race, the complete removal of all means of reproduction of the so-called Aryan race. Men will control the destiny of this race, and it is now time to make sure the white race becomes extinct through these mass immigration and having a virtual zero birth rate, which is happening now. Like our birth rate in Canada is declining. I wonder why. We have all enjoyed the visions repeated all over the world every day of the last white children playing with the little dark children. No, this is their writings, not mine. Knowing that they're being set up for their eventual destruction. We can ruin the ancient pure bloodlines of the Aryan child by convincing him or her of the altruism, which I think that's the downfall of white people, of begetting interracial children. We must expose the race mixing of urban centers to suburbs and rural areas of the country. And this is from August 25th, 1998 in New York. He was saying this stuff, literally calling for the extinction and the eradication of white people. And this is why I think that they're using this on purpose, right? They let the third world breed out of control because the people that are in control, you got to be kidding yourself. You think they couldn't control that? They could have definitely influenced things and wars but like, you know what I mean? Like there's billions upon billions of, you could import like millions of specifically Indians, if you want to use those people into every country, and they could literally go millions of them in every single white country, and there would still be a billion of them back at home, right? And they don't like, even I've talked about this where I've talked about the white genocide with a chick that does it, got really big on TikTok for talking about this stuff and about what's going on in South Africa, where they're literally calling for the death of the white farmer. There's literally thousands of white crosses where they're just slaughtering white people, pouring boiling hot water down their throats. All of that is very real. It is a real thing that's going on. My buddy from Ireland literally knows someone close to him that went there to work and saw these things happening, right? So I've had someone comment on my videos like, well, India's overpopulated. What do you want us to do? And I'm like, that's not our responsibility. Right. That you let your birth, you let your birth, they that they're birth rate get out of control, and then we're supposed to like house and educate and all these things. And there's a lot of people that have pointed towards mass immigration, and immigration doesn't actually help the third world, because you're actually taking the well-educated people that could teach those people how to better themselves and maybe not build a giant garbage pile next to the Taj Mahal, because that's facts of things that have happened or are happening. Polluting the oceans, all the things that are going on, right? That's a fact. That is happening. That is happening. So instead of you take the smart people out and they go towards the, the Western world, which is already built into a civilization and already has these social constructs and these social services that our ancestors built and created for our people to inherit, not people to show up here yesterday and then get to take advantage of all of the things that we built. Like, they're paying refugees in Canada $3,000 a month. That is more than the senior citizens get that paid into the system. And it's not the people coming here's fault. Obviously, they're literally telling them, come here and we'll give you free housing. There's all these scams coming out now, which are proving that this is true. And obviously, it's these billionaires and these people are like, I'm getting paid from the government to house these people in my condo. And that's literally what's happening. There's proof of this all over, right? And it's not their fault that this is happening, but they definitely let the third world breed in essentially the way that they did for a reason. And it's not me that views this at all. I actually think that, every different, like, it's because I call out this stuff does not mean I have hatred towards other ethnic groups. There's good and bad. There's terrible white people, literally terrible, fucking disgusting white people. It's not that. It's just that I noticed this attack on like the general population of white people on all angles, all different ethnic groups doing this, even white people to themselves. This white guilt thing of feel bad for stuff that your ancestors did. And no one else brings up their history of what they've gone through or like what things that they've done. Like the idea is like the word slave comes from Slavic, which was when white people were enslaved by the Ottoman Empire in larger numbers than blacks were during the transatlantic slave trade, which was controlled and owned by Jewish people. They all owned the slave ships. Christopher Columbus was Jewish. There's proof into all of that. And so my whole point is to point out these things and say, this is not concerning everybody. Like everyone in Canada is starting to get it. We actually, there's like 62% of the population is white. And of course, whatever happened to the indigenous is like it's bad. I can't like this, like it is what it is. But the thing is, there was around 200,000 indigenous people that existed in Canada specifically. There were 600 different tribes that were all warring with each other and colonizing and killing each other for land. There's like a documented, historic, like it's facts. That's what was going on. And then when they showed up, like disease was spread unintentionally. I'm reading this book called Not Stolen. I tried to get the historian guy that wrote the book on my show, but he was like, "Oh, I heard you talking about the Weimar Republic," and he didn't really like that. So like I've read his book. It's pretty interesting because it goes into the facts that like all the land was kind of bought up and purchased over a long period of time, and that Canada actually wasn't the one that we didn't have these like Indian wars, quote unquote, that America has. It's like all these things that have been used to like white man bad, his ancestor did this, and I'm like, the people that built Canada, the people that came across here or America came across here on boats, surviving, struggling, crossing the oceans in treacherous terrain. Some of them brought over by slaves, some of them fleeing persecution. It's literally happened. People were forced to come here in some regard with the Immigration Act that the British did to bring in immigrants, to essentially have kids here. All this stuff is true, and then it's like people are like, "Oh, you're all bad," and it's like that you're not looking at the greater picture. And none of us have connections to the royal family. You think like in like London, England, when people were starving and Queen Anne-Marie, like whatever, the Queen was like, give them cake and syrup. You think they were like, "Oh yeah, I'm so rich and powerful, I'm gonna like destroy the whole native population across the world." Like no one had they didn't have conceptions of these things, and had like they didn't know what they were doing. They had no comprehension of the future. So my thing is getting really sick of like people blaming white people for everything, and then it's used to divide and then take over. We are less than 8% of the worldwide population, and I was gonna say, because you brought this up, think about it. If there is populations of people out there in some rural places and in the third world that have IQs that are like 65 or 70, yeah, it would be a little easier to rule over them, right? So if you, but I definitely like, most Europeans IQs are over 100, where I said collectively in India it's like 74. So if you're gonna want to control over a population, you'd want people, and of course there is smart people in India, of course, but they all came to the Western world a lot of times. A lot of those people come here because they're educated enough to come here and then to work and help out in our infrastructure that we've built or whatever, right? But like if you were to dominate and control over a population, you would want the stupidest people to survive, you know?
Right on. Well,
Sorry, that's a really long rant, but
well, since we're in the eugenics range here, you mentioned earlier how the jibbity jabs may have been designed to target specific genetics or races, and this isn't the first time I've heard this, but it's been a while since I've heard anything else about this. Have you revisited that or heard anything more about this possibility?
even RFK said it. He was like, they found out that it was targeting like whites and blacks, and conveniently not like Jewish people or some shit like that, which is crazy. Like that it inflicts on certain genetic traits. And then this like, there's a lot of people like bringing this stuff up. There's been documented facts in science of like that there is differences between us, and that's not a bad thing or a good thing. There is differences between people. They've literally done studies where like an Asian person's brain does not think the same as a European person's brain. It's literally documented facts. Like if a black person wants to have if they have a fractured bone, they need a bone replacement or whatever, right? They have to use someone who's black. That's because our DNA is different, right? And this thing of like, well, I think also they want to do it with everybody at some point is to destroy everybody's connections to whatever this is. There's a reason why they hate white people. It's gotta be. There's gotta be. Why would they go through all this effort? They wouldn't go through all this stuff unless there was some reason, right? And it's like our DNA is like sentient, right? I had Jeremy McKenzie on the show. He's a great dude that's trying to expose all this stuff. And he made a good point. He's like, that's like that DNA is like alive in you. And then it gets passed through generations. All those memories, all those things that are in that could be like past life experiences. All those like those like kind of little fragments of DNA that go into your children. Like my wife, her family's from Belgium, and in now right now only 88% of the people in Belgium are not Belgian. So essentially, like there's only 13% of the youth, the people, the children, the future of that country, only 13% are actually Belgian. So you're gonna 88% is people from other countries, foreign people who are not share nothing in common and have no heritage connection to them. And that's why I'm like, that's concerning. If it was other ethnic groups, if this was happening in somewhere in Africa or India or China or Japan, whatever, right? And there's like, oh, like they're essentially being systematically destroyed using their own tax money to do it. Everyone would be concerned. And it's funny how like people can bring up these topics if they're a different color. But if white people do it, they're racist and they're a Nazi and all these things that they use these words to attack people who are like, hey, I like my country and I love my people for who they are. And I'm not going to feel bad for things that I had nothing to do with hundreds of years ago. And neither did my ancestors, because my ancestors had nothing to do with the atrocities that took place in history. That's a bullshit fabricated fairy tale that these other ethnic groups like to tell themselves. And this is not against anybody else, but this is what I've witnessed with my eyes of what's happening. And it's funny how you can't be like, I love my heritage and I'm proud of who I am and I want to conserve, because that's what conservatives are supposed to do. They're supposed to conserve your national identity, your cultural heritage. I want to conserve that. I want Britain to be for the British, like England for the English, right? Scotland for the Scottish. People should be able to, hey, if I really like Japan, I would move there. Ryan Gable did. Yeah. Like he fell in love with a Japanese woman, went there, and now he's living there. If I really love the Japanese culture, I would go there and I would assimilate and I would do things in their manner and their way of life. But that's not what's happening, especially more or less. And it's funny because people are like, well, Canada's colonized, so is America or Australia. And Australia's actually being flooded with Indians too. And they're being used as a weapon. These people are being used as a weapon. That is a fact. You can clearly see that's what's happening. And because we're colonized, we can't we can't make this excuse of oh, this is our land or whatever. Like, and people are like, Canada's always been multiculturalist. It hasn't, though. 98% of this country was white for its entire conception since this nation was founded and built. And it was the idea of multiculturalism was the fact that you had the French, English, Irish, that were Irish treated like shit, even some Italians, and then eventually everyone put their differences aside from across the world and they blended together and made new people, like Americans, like the Mexicans. The Mexicans are a new people because the Spanish, with some of the indigenous people that live there, blended together and made a Mexican. And now they developed their own accents. Like in Canada, we have our own accents, especially out east, out west. We developed literally new speech. Like there's the French Canadians, they literally speak a different type of French. Like these are different new ethnic people that you should be able to celebrate your culture and your heritage. And you shouldn't be kicked down or called racist because you want to preserve your own heritage. Yet everybody else can do it, but we
Right.
can't. You know what I mean?
I definitely see that, man. What do you think the solution is? I know here in the United States and observably everything on the planet, these collective solutions that are put forward by the ruling class only cause more destruction, only cause more
Yes.
problems. The solutions are, in my perspective, individually based. We have to make the changes in our own lives that have that ripple effect, and we have to check out of the systems and not support the things that don't have the best interest of humanity. We have to stop voting. We have to
Yes.
stop eating the shit food that they're providing for us. Have to stop perpetuating these ideologies that are killing us. And to me, that's the way out. What do you think?
I agree. I agree. Before can I get into some
Let's
more
do
of this
it.
stuff if you'd be
Yeah.
interested? Okay, so this is just an article I brought up because I thought people would find this interesting as we're talking about this. But it's the Kalgeri was a Jewish financier by Jewish bankers. In 1922, he founded the Pan-European movement, whose goals was to create a federation of European nations led by the United States of America, conveniently. Among his first supporters was Jewish banker Max Warburg, donated 60,000 marks to this evil racist cause because technically, it is by definition racist to disparage and try to erase. It's genocide by definition to erase other people's cultures, their heritage, systematically destroy them with their own money. And so they put all this, essentially it didn't appear much to the public of the whole European Union. It was convenient. Everything we do is selling our souls for convenience. But it moved to the scenes of this project for a European integration and the creation of a new mixed race slave race to serve a Jewish master race, which every time like Hitler wasn't talking about the master race. There's literally no documented footage that he was saying any of that shit. That's proof. You can go look it up. It was a lot of times projected from the other side. So this is his idealism, essentially this classic, like, this warfare between different caste systems and stuff like that. And the Eurasian Negroid race, this is him saying it, not me, of the future, similar to appearance in ancient Egyptians, will replace the diversity, listen to this is interesting, the diversity of peoples and the diversity of individuals. Instead of destroying European Judaism, Europe against her will, we will refine and re-educate this people, driving them to their future status as a lead nation through artificial evolutionary process. Is not surprising that people that escaped from the ghetto prison became spiritual nobilities of Europe. Thus, the compassionate care given by Europe created a new breed of aristocrats. This happened when the European feudal aristocracy crashed of the emancipation of the Jews due to the French Revolution. And if you study all the revolutions, they are consistently, it's to push a revolution and then consolidate the power. So you get everyone to fight with each other. Every revolution was sponsored by like Rothschilds and different the people of nobility, and then they use that, and then once everything is destroyed, which I was also going to mention what you did, is this is true, this is what's happening. They need to destroy the old world, much as people think they did with the wars, is destroy like the ancient architecture and stuff like that throughout Europe. And it's supposed to be the bells and all those other like connections to like what bells were doing to ward off like demons and evil spirits. But I believe that's part of it, is destroy the old world, right? And then bring everybody to the same poverty level. The idea of communism is not to make everything equal, it's to make everyone equally poor. That's why I do think they're doing this, is part of the reason why, if you see like videos of France, Ireland, Scotland, and what it looks like, especially in the UK, where it looks like a Muslim country, is to bring everybody to the same poverty level. And one thing I always like to bring up is diversity is not a strength; it causes division. In what fantasy made up clown world does diversity actually create a cohesive society? Homogeneity does. People sharing the same commonalities, the same beliefs, and that could be people of different colors. You could have, Christian people from India that also agree with what's going on and like want to assimilate and become part of a Christian identity in a society that was built and founded by, say, Christians, right? It doesn't have to be based on color, but it's about sharing the same like beliefs and things, right? Once you have too many people of different ethnicities, languages, cultures, and religions, it causes more and more divide. That's why they're using all of this is on purpose. It's for division. If you have Muslims over here yelling about this, and Christians over here yelling about this, and Hindus yelling about, you're constantly going to have everyone fighting each other instead of looking up at what is really going on and who's really pulling all the puppet strings and all these factions, even funding all sides from behind the scenes, whether it be religious groups or protests, and then getting them all to fight each other. Black Lives Matter was a great example of that, funded by George Soros for sure. It was a cultural Marxist agenda. They admit that. They literally say they were Marxists, right? So it causes more and more division. Everybody fights, and then they will scoop up all the power that they can as this is happening. And now in Canada, they're going to start coming after people's properties, because of equity. So they want to bring everybody to the same poverty level, using all these different ethnic groups to fight each other, all these different, all this diversity, and then eventually they'll scoop up all the power, and everyone will be poor, they'll be rich, and they'll control you with a boot on your neck. And that's where we're headed.
You ever thought about coming over to the United States with us gun-toting white boys?
I would love to, and it's like my wife likes where we are here, right? We have family close and all that thing, and we don't want to give it up just yet. But like I've obviously told her that I was like, we might be able to. The stuff that I do and the amount of money I get paid here, I could like live pretty good in America, which is crazy. The tax system is different, and people are like, okay, like Canada has free healthcare. I'm like, no, we don't, you dumb fucks. We pay so much fucking taxes for that shit, like absurd amount of taxes. It's fucking crazy. And I know we got a little more serious on this, but my podcast is usually very comical. You know that we really make jokes about things, but like this is something that just was important to me that I discovered and I started looking into, and then I talked to people all around the world and they're experiencing the same thing. Like if it was just in Canada and this is happening, or it's just like, okay, we're just flooding the country with a bunch of foreign diasporas of people. I say that because it just makes sense. It's people that do not assimilate. It was just Canada, but like, man, this is fucked. This country's they're destroying it from the inside for sure. But it's just because it's happening everywhere that white people, quote unquote, exist as a people. The places that white people call home. Right. And the thing is, too, like the Americans are the whites in America, quotations, are like less than 50% right now. In Canada, we're like 76%, something like that, or 67%. We're like a little over half or something like that are still like the white Canadians. Because now it's funny how it's like if you're Japanese, you're Japanese, right? I can't go there and become Japanese. But for some reason, in especially places like America, that's why they call them African Americans. But in places like Canada, they just believe like if you wave a passport that you're Canadian. And that's not what it is. It's in our blood. It's in our heritage. They used to play heritage moments on the TV to show us like, hey, these are the people that built your country. But now if anyone can be anything from anywhere, then there's no identity. And that's something that I wanted to bring up too, to kind of end this on, is if people don't if they don't care about their country and they don't have a national identity, something that they can hold on to, hence why people are split up going into these everyone's tribalistic. No matter if things all end, if the technology fails, guess what? It's going back to tribalism, and you're going to have different ethnic groups stick together, and you see it all over. You saw Black Lives Matter. You see it with the Hindus and the Sikhs and all this stuff. They stick together. But if we do it as white people, it's white supremacy. It's Nazism. It's all the things that they throw at but us, but yet everybody else can look out for their own people. And at the end of the day, it's going to come back to that. But if you have a whole nation of people who are like, oh, anyone from anywhere can be anything, and we're just a melting pot of just all these different cultures, they're not identifying with a tribalistic view of like, okay, a country is supposed to be like a family. That's what a nation is supposed to be like. It's not supposed to be ran like a corporation like the government's doing. It's supposed to be a big family. People look out for each other. Canada used to be like this, where everyone felt like they knew each other. They were all like neighbors. You could trust your neighbors. You could leave your doors unlocked. Now we have a home invasion every other day since mass immigration has taken over. So a country is, and we were one of the safest countries in the world until the last 10 to 15 years. And it used to feel like a big family. That's what a nation is supposed to be. People that look out for each other and care for each other. And they've destroyed all that. So if people don't have an identity and they think, oh, my ancestors were evil colonizers, just pull down all the statues of John A. Macdonald, rip down the statues of all of our founding fathers that built this country because of cultural Marxism. A lot of the times people are doing that are white people and some natives that have also been brainwashed to like hate white people, but they've benefited in a large amount also, right? In Canada, we've given the Indigenous communities $2 trillion. And then the chiefs steal it the same way that the politicians steal our money. Like if you see a chart of how much money has been given to the Indigenous communities in Canada, and the money has gone up, but the way the essentially standard of living has stayed consistently the same. It's because the chiefs are stealing all the money and siphoning it off and doing all sorts of horrible shit with it. And this is what's happening everywhere. So if you don't have something to identify with, you're going to go to these other groups like the transgender movement, or right. So they tribalistically band together and be like, I have no identity, so now I'm this. I need to hold on to this group, and then now it's a big umbrella of all these crazy fucking people, especially in that group. And without that, right, there's no like you don't have no like there's no. It's nothing there. You're not going to fight for a country or a nation that you think is evil or is built on colonization, all those other terms. You're not going to fight for that. You're going to be like, tear it all down, and then you're enslaved, right?
100%, man. Yeah, I look at some of the things happening in the larger cities here in the United States, and it more closely resembles what you're describing in the larger cities rather than the more rural areas. But I said in my introduction, it's all a slippery slope. If it's just allowed to unfold the way it is in Canada, who's to say that within the next few years, things here in the United States couldn't change? So I think we need to be helping our Canadian brothers overcome this stuff, doing whatever we can. And I appreciate you bringing this to light because, again, also, like I said, most of us here aren't aware at all what it's really like to experience what's going on there, and like what you were describing in the UK and Ireland, some very horrible things happening that we don't really have to worry about right now. So it's just
they're kicking us down, right? It's weird because like essentially they are replacing. They've bragged about it. They're replacing the Canadian people. So essentially the last hardworking Canadians are paying for everybody else just to exist. Like that, to me, like I got nothing against anybody, and I truly mean that. And I think there's people out there that need help, but we need to help ourselves first. There's more tent cities across Canada, something that never existed before. I've been here my whole life, and there's people that are like, oh, it's always been like this. No, it hasn't. I knew what it was like in the 90s. I've talked to my family and people that have been here and existed here for hundreds of years and ancestors and stuff like that passed on information. Like, it wasn't like this. It wasn't like this crime-ridden place that's going on. There's all the tent cities that are popping up everywhere in Canada are all a lot of times white people, which is very sad. And then people coming here and make fun of us for that. And it's because we've been kicked down. There's teenagers that can't find jobs at places like Tim Hortons or McDonald's that you do for a summer because now all these like ethnic groups are coming in and doing those jobs that the government is actually subsidizing your wages for. So like, to me, people are like, it's not a systematic destruction. I'm like, no, it is though. And this is happening everywhere. Even in America, it'll start happening too. Like, it's already kind of started, and it's get whitey, kill whitey, attack whitey, and I've seen this numerous times, and I can't deny reality, because if you say it's not happening, like the people out there that may listen, like you're denying reality. You can see it. Go travel to the UK, go travel to Belgium, go travel to Ireland, go see it for yourself, because I know people there and they've seen it. They are witnessing it happen. Hence why there's protests everywhere. But the thing of how to stop this is again to collectivize. And that's in groups of people, whether you be black, white. It should people should realize what's going on. Like I had an indigenous guy on the show, a Native American, and he says Native American, but he's Canadian, right? But that's like the people that existed here beforehand. And we talked about like how the natives and the whites need to band together, and obviously the blacks or Asians, where people that have been here for generations and assimilated and became what the country wanted, right? Like we have a famous saying from one of our Wilfrid Laurier, just about like if you come here, you assimilate, you become what it means to be Canadian, right? Which used to be a thing until a lot. It's funny, Pierre Trudeau, Trudeau's father, quotations, even though his father was probably definitely Castro. Um, he started doing this in the '60s. Is they changed our flag that showed our identity. It showed the Irish, French, Scottish, and English on the flag. I have it in my backyard, the original ensign flag. That, and then they changed our flag to the corporate symbol we see today. They did all these things and efforts, and Pierre Trudeau is a full blown communist and admits it, and went around to communist countries all around the world. So how we fight this is collectivism, and the people that realize what's going on, whatever race you might be or whatever religion, sees that this is happening, because now, interestingly enough, there is people that are noticing that are other ethnicities or races. There is black people that are noticing this attack on white people. I've talked with a guy I have on the show. He's in Quebec. He's a Korean guy, and notices what's going on and is literally like, I see what's happening, man. He's like, if this is somebody else, I would say the same thing. But I clearly see you guys being attacked at every angle. There's more and more people from other ethnic groups or other races that are noticing what's happening and are clearly being like, yeah, that's not good. And weirdly enough, you see with a lot of like Asians, they actually assimilate, they care for people, they're reserved, they respect people. Them as a cultural like group in general usually are pretty respectful. You don't see that from everybody else at the end of the day, right? Everyone's been programmed to fight each other and, well, you owe me this, so slavery, you did this to me. But collectivism and the idea of bringing people together, and which I would love to do at some point, is like get communities together. Because if I have chickens and then the next guy next to me has a cow, and then the next person like has vegetables, that's where we should be going as a society, and people that want to disconnect and unplug from this quote unquote matrix, is to start doing things to become self-sufficient and becoming stronger and more aware. Like I just bought a punching bag. Like I bought a heavy bag to hit on, and I want to attempt to get stronger. We did a garden last year. I don't know if we'll be able to this year just with the baby coming. But I would like to have chickens at some point. If people stop being reliant on the government and the things that they can hold over your head and control you with, like food, because I think that's coming at some point, that they're going to try to control the food system in Canada. I think they're starting there. They're going to start doing the same things that they did in the Netherlands and over in the UK. But if people band together and collectivize together to fight against this, that's when it all comes to an end. Because one guy doing it, they don't want to bother with him. But if you have thousands of people doing it, then they become a problem, because the government doesn't want people to be self-sufficient. And I think whatever race you might be, or who you are, or where you come from, this is what I think all of us should be working towards. And then looking at each other and realizing, like, I'm not your enemy. White people are not the enemy of the world. We're not everybody's enemy because of things that we had nothing to do with hundreds of years ago. And all of that stuff is being programmed through social media and algorithms and, this psychological warfare into people's heads. And I don't want to become global South Africa. I don't want Canada to become like South Africa. I don't want America to. I don't want anywhere else to become like that, because that's going to happen. You're going to have these people that are calling for the deaths of everybody else that isn't them. And it's happening. The stuff that's happening in South Africa is fucking disturbing, and they don't care. And then there's people on CNN or whatever claiming that it's not a real genocide. I'm pretty sure it's very real. You can go ask the people that have experienced it.
Yeah,
right?
man. If you're going to hate any race, it should be the reptilians.
That's very true. Yeah, because they're controlling everything. And like I said, I don't want anyone to take anything I said out of context. I love all people. I care for all people. Love for my own people and my own culture and my own heritage is not hatred for others. That's absurd. Because I guarantee if you have like a black nationalist on this show, it's okay. Like, you know who Jake Shields is? Jake Shields has these conversations all the time. Where he's like, I'll have Joel Davis on, a Australian like nationalist, and then he'll have a black national, like having conversations and having an understanding of like, hey, we're all coming from the same thing of like, there's a problem. Stop fighting each other and look up And yeah, I want to be able to celebrate and care for my own culture and my heritage and not told I'm a racist or a bigot for doing so or wanting to protect, what's going on in Europe and stuff like that. Because in 20 years, Europe may not exist at all. It won't be Europe anymore. It's the same thing with like a place is the people that inhabit it, right? Canada is the Canadians. We have a city called Brampton that is literally now it's controlled by people from India. There's like nobody there, mostly just Sikhs. There's only their ethnic group is really living there, other than a small portion of the population. And it doesn't look like Canada anymore because the Canadians don't live there. If you took all the Canadians and you put them in Zimbabwe and then you took all the people from Zimbabwe and you put them into Canada, it's not going to be Canada anymore. And that's why when you bring in all these different, it's not going to be Canada. So like this idea that like everyone just can blend in and become the same is not true. It's not. You can see that in the reflection of what's going on in South Africa amongst other places, right? The nation is the people, not the other way around.
Right on. Tomcat, thank you so much, man. We'll definitely have to do this again. We'll get back into the weird paranormal shit next time for sure. Before you go, let everyone know one more time where they can find you.
100%. And yeah, I definitely want to bring you back on Strange Brew. A lot of people really liked your episode.
Yeah.
Like they were loving it. Like people still like crazy downloading it. It's all the psychedelic reptilian stuff. People are so fascinated by that stuff. It's wild. But yeah, like we mostly do a comedy show, but this is something that like I honed in on and cared about and wanted just to say, hey, this is the information I have. We actually just released our Kalgeri plan episode in audio. Some of the stuff because of what I'm building up content for when I'm away for when I have a kid. But
congratulations,
there's some episodes
by the
that
way.
Thank you. I'm very excited, but we just released that one. There's a second part to the Kalgeri plan that will come out, and we break all this stuff down. The whole time we say like, hey, this is not about racism or anything like that. This is about just showing you evidence and things that are going on, right? But we do a lot of fun episodes. We talk about true crime and serial killers and the paranormal and all that good stuff. So definitely check out Strange Brew Podcast. We've had some cool guests. To start off as me and my friends just getting drunk and talking about conspiracies and weird, strange things. But it evolved, and I've had people like Chris on and all sorts of different interesting guests. I usually bring on people that I specifically find interesting and like, oh, this guy looks wild. Let's talk to him, But mostly it started off me and my friends just having fun and shooting the shit. And you can obviously find it anywhere, Stranger Podcast. And then anyone that hears this, definitely go check out my music, The Reptilian. I'd appreciate the support. I'm getting more and more people on Spotify and Apple Music and YouTube and all that stuff. So your support would mean a lot, especially for my music, because it's something I've done for longer than podcasting and then finally started to release it last year. I didn't put it out for a long time, and I was like, okay, it's time to just put it out there.
You go. This is the time to put your shit out there right now, man. Yeah, I have all your links in the description. Thank you again, brother. We'll do it again soon.
I appreciate that.
Until next time, everyone, have an excellent evening, and we'll talk again tomorrow. See you all then.